Canson Baryta Photographic is a silky smooth satin paper reminiscent of traditional darkroom Baryta prints. It offers excellent black density, probably the highest on the market, together with great image contrast and detail. One of the things I'm often asked is how Baryta differs from platine fiber rag, a similar paper. And it differs in two distinct ways. Number one, it's definitely a smoother paper, and also it's an alpha cellulose paper, whereas platine fiber rag is a cotton-backed paper. Now, Baryta does contain some natural brightening agents, and I say natural because it's inherent in the barium sulfate coating that gives Baryta its beautiful finish. But it's still considered a museum-grade paper and meets all industry standards for longevity. And really, it's a paper that works well with a whole variety of images, color of course, but it especially shines with black and white, where rich blacks and deep contrast is important. So if you're fond of darkroom prints and you want a paper that has a rich satin finish, then Baryta Photographic is definitely one to consider.
So I'm looking at Kay, and Kay's looking at me, and if you're wondering why we're not doing this very professionally, it's because you've got Peter Eastway at the microphone. He has no idea what he's talking about. However, they have given me the job to panel chair the Nature and Wildlife category at the Australian Photographic Prize, and it is proudly sponsored by Wacom. And before you hear me wax on about Wacom, just know I'm also a Wacom ambassador, so I'm not going to say anything nasty about Wacom at all. So fantastic, love the use of the Wacom pen for doing my little bits of masking and all of that sort of stuff. Of course, in this category, there are certain limitations that maybe I would be in trouble for. So burning may be used to enhance the image as long as the authenticity of the original scene is retained. Colour images must appear natural. Images may also be entered as black and white conversions. Doesn't seem very natural to me, but let's go and talk about that another time. Techniques that remove in-camera elements such as dust spots, digital noise and film scratches are allowed, no trouble, with the exception of cropping. The addition, removal, relocation or replacement of pictorial elements is not permitted. So, a description to provide judges with additional technical or biologically significant information is permitted, limited to 25 words, and we have some wonderful speakers to help us there. Okay, any questions? We've got our blue coats there, we're ready to roll. A crowd of 50,000, the football can't be on this afternoon, they're all down here. That's it. And okay, we're going to run through again, are we, for the online audience? Is that the idea? Okay, we have our entries. We're going to do a quick slide run through now. Ever done. I've been quiet for around about 60 seconds, I think. Well, I loved watching that Wacom promo and the 80,000 levels of sensitivity in the pen, and I've got a little Cintiq. Well, I've got a big Cintiq, which is wonderful. Intuos I take away, and I've got the Mobile Studio Pro, so no matter where I'm travelling, I know that was the last category, but I'm just showing off, aren't I? I love showing off. It doesn't happen very often, certainly not at my age. Okay, well, we're ready to roll. First print, please. There's only one person who's older than me. John, good on you, John. So you guys got a problem? We've got two people not judging at the moment. Bill and Jackie are in the waiting room.
Yes, right, John. There we go. All good.
Waiting. I've got 3 score. There we go. We have a 79, a commended image. And while there might be some applause in there, this is our first picture. And I'm going to gently suggest to the judges that this has been significantly underscored. I love the detail. I love the fact that this is a photography awards. This is not nature, it's all about nature, but this is photography. Look at the bird, look at the detail we've got, look at the creative way that the photographer has chosen to present it to us. And I would just commend you to perhaps discuss it amongst yourselves, when I let you, of course, and see what we can do. So we're on 79, so we're not far away. I'm going to start off with Robin, I think, because you're on 82.
I agree. I think I did underscore it at 82, and I think that was the highest score as well. He's beautiful. He's sharp where he needs to be sharp. His eye is sharp. The depth of field the photographer has used is really lovely. It drops away in the front, and then it drops away ever so gently right into the background there. And I think the black frame complements the little sharpness of the bird.
So, Mel, I think I'm going to talk to you next.
Sure, why not? I think the black line for me was sort of very heavy. I think the rest of the tones are so beautiful and soft and subtle, and that was just distracting for me. And being a print competition, that's what I'm seeing.
Bill? Sure.
In the world of bird photography, which is amazingly sophisticated these days, this doesn't strike me as something particularly special. I think it is very high quality practice. I've scored it as a high in the commended range, and I think that's where it belongs. I mean, I think we need to reserve our highest praise for images that are really special, and I think this is very, very good, but not all that great.
Everybody okay to score? I've challenged, so everybody can rescore. It's our first picture for today, so please clear the boards and rescore. Well, we've gone nowhere. We're going to end up on 79 again, so you'll get another chance to say up or down next time. Thank you for the conversation. Next print, please. I'm assuming there haven't been any captions so far. That's great.
No caption on this one.
We have an average score of 78, and a commended image, very simple graphic composition, which I think is very, very strong. I think it works beautifully well. I just wonder whether a little bit more light could be introduced during post-production in the foreground, and maybe even just to lift up the tree bough, even maybe a little bit in the leaves as well. So maybe just helping without going too far, because we are in the nature category, but I think we can lighten a little bit more. Next print, please. We have a semi-finalist with a score of 82. And I think we're all responding to the great graphic nature of the image, the use of colour contrast. I'm not 100% sure what those little black fellows are down there. Are they actually animals or are they bits of seaweed? I'm not too sure. But either way, the image itself is incredibly striking. Thank you. Next print, please. We have a 79. And we've got a couple of people in the semi-finalists. We've got a couple who are not. What are we going to do, Bill?
Oh, well, let's talk about it.
I think we should.
I think this is transcends documentary to the point where it's becoming artistic here. I think it's a really lovely interpretation of not just the bird itself, but the landscape that the bird is in and the time at which it was taken. As everyone else probably is on the panel, I'm very troubled by the heaviness of the border. I think the border should match the delicacy of the print. So I've actually backpedaled a bit on my score because of that, but I think in every other regard, I think it is a pretty solid semi-finalist.
Okay. Steve? Yep.
Yeah, I understand the intent of the photographer. It is a beautiful misty morning. I do feel that perhaps the tonal contrast does need to be massaged a little bit in order to capture that decisive moment. I'm disregarding the border at this stage. I'm more or less looking at the tonal range in the image.
Okay. Are we comfortable with anybody? So I'll take that as a challenge. We can all change our scores. I'll just add one more comment for the live stream people at home. You can't see the black border that we're looking at, I'm told. And also just wonder whether we need the space and whether a square framing might even take, if we're already talking about being an artistic piece, maybe a square. But anyway, that's what we've got. Where are we going to play? Whoops, sorry. Okay, where are we going to place it? We're going to get it into a semi-finalist range. Thank you. Next print, please. Some clarification there is that entrants were advised to put a key line around their prints so that it was clear where the image area started and finished. So my suggestion might be for entrants to put a very light key line in a situation like that so it doesn't, so when we're looking, and I know listening to you, you were disregarding the key line at any rate, which is good to say. Thanks for that clarification, Kay.
The description on this print, tawny frogmouth, not doing a very good job camouflaged as part of the tree.
We have a commended image with a score of 77. Steve, a quick comment. The light behind the tawny frogmouth almost looks like wings in some ways, doesn't it? Is that not enough to get it up to the next level?
Yeah, basically the composition is really well conceived. What I found a little bit distracting is the way it was printed and resolved on the paper. So paper type is also an important aspect of display as well. So maybe a different paper choice could have elevated it to the next level.
Thank you. Next print, please.
The description on this print reads, 60 million light years, distant and spanning over 500,000 light years. Two large galaxies are colliding, triggering formation of a black hole near the centre. 6 hours exposure.
We have a semi-finalist with a score of 80, and some wonderful work resolving and bringing that up. I don't feel that I need to add anything to the handicraft, which is excellent, except to say there's an awful lot of control in there, which I am only learning to see more and more as I get more experience at this myself. Next print, please.
The description on this print reads, Xander funaria, yellow-tailed black cockatoos shrouded in low cloud.
This print has a commended score of 76, and I think the composition is really beautiful. I know it's low cloud. I wonder whether it needs to be a little bit lighter. I was looking at it and thinking, well, I could almost understand why it's a little bit darker, but yeah, the positioning is very, very elegant. Bill, you're grabbing the microphone as though you need to add something eloquent to my diatribe.
No, I don't need to. I just thought for the benefit of the photographer, I'm wondering why the circular presentation. I'm not sure that it's added anything to this. The beauty in the picture is the lower right quadrant of that circle, and I'm wondering whether just focusing on that as perhaps a square format or some other cropping might have been more...
Got to say, I do like the circle, but there you go. Yeah, each to their own.
I'm asking a question rather than making,
correct,
making a statement.
Good point. Me too, because neither of us wants to be wrong, do we? Next print, please. We have a semi-finalist with a score of, roll of drums, 82. And I think we all agree that it's the gesture of that step, isn't it? On, you know, that absolutely wonderful, beautiful gesture. Next print, please. We're going to have a quick judge change. Thanks, Robin. Welcome, Joe. Don't expect me to be polite for the rest of this, though, now. So you logged in, you're all under control? Okay, fantastic, thank you. We have a 76 commended. And I was just inspecting the beautiful detail in the print. I think that's glorious. I wonder whether printing it down, in other words, darkening it. I mean, the actual white aspen, maybe, I'm not too sure, I'm no botanist. The white trunk is fine, but some of the branches in the background are perhaps a little bit light. And I wonder whether darkening them down might give a little bit more contrast to the key subject. Next print, please. Birch. Birch, is it? Thank you.
The description on this one reads, "The circle of life. A butcher bird dives down from the tree and after a short scuffle in the grass returns to a branch with its next..."
You're right. My apologies.
Do you want me to start again? Okay, the description reads, "The circle of life. A butcher bird dives down from the tree and after a short scuffle in the grass returns to a branch with its next meal, plucking feathers and legs that are still moving, nature in its most brutal form."
So we have it's come through. Scores come through, but I can see 79. So we have a commended. Well, we can have a chat about this. I mean, I'm a bit worried about those butcher birds because they go from my canaries back at home. So it would be good to know a little bit more about it. Talk to us about it. You're on 84. Why do you feel it's in the semi-finalist?
Yeah, we rarely see. Well, it's hard to find a kill situation like this, and I just think the photographer has captured every detail of the feathers. There's blood, there's gore, like there's a lot of stuff going on. I would have gone higher actually. I just wonder if the bird is actually too high up in the frame. And we could have seen more around space around the top, but I just think it's so well seen.
So for the others who didn't put it up into the semi-finalist category, what's holding you back? If the subject is good, what's wrong with the presentation? Is it the exposure? Is the highlights? I mean, it's hard to sort of change the angle. Excuse me, Mr. Bird, can you move around? Steve?
And yeah, absolutely. And I commend the photographer for capturing a scene moment like this in such awkward and challenging environments. The composition is as best as it can be in terms of this, but in order for me to, I guess, come up into a higher range, I do feel it needs to be a little bit stronger in that visual communication, even though there is all those elements that make that.
Okay, writer for reply? No, all right. If you would like to rescore, please. And I think that was me challenging, so you can all score again. It sort of becomes academic a little bit because we're looking for a majority of photographers to be 80 or above to get into the semi-finalist category. And I think we've done it, so we're just moved up. So semi-finalist, and the got average score, final score of roll of drums, waiting for the computer, 81. Well, my only suggestion to the photographer might be to lower the contrast, and then you can build the contrast back up on your subject, but that might allow us to get into the subject a little bit better. Next print, please. We have a commended print with a score of 75. You can? Of course you can, Mel. I love it. All right, so Mel, you're on 82.
What a unique perspective that this photographer has found and treated it so delicately. The focus is everywhere it needs to be, such subtle tones. I'm not sure why I'm on my own up here.
Okay, so we need someone to tell you or to change their mind. What have we got? Jackie, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think it is very delicately handled, and the shallow depth of field is excellent. I do find that the framing it's too big in the frame. It's not subtle enough, I think, to go into the next level. But yeah.
Okay, are you looking to say something, O learned Bill, or you just can't quite reach the microphone?
It's the lumbago. Look, I think this ticks all the boxes for commended. That's basically what it is for me. There's nothing special about it. Again, this type of photography, flower studies, the best of them are incredibly imaginative and sophisticated, and this is pretty normal.
Okay. Mel? Okay, all right. If you'd like to rescore, thank you. You can keep your score. So we have a 76, so commended. For the benefit at home for the photographer maybe, if I look at the digital reproduction there, there's a separation between the top of the bloom and the background, which is not actually on the print. So it might be a printing issue that you perhaps need to look at. And yeah, but otherwise, thank you very much. We're going to go to the next print. Joe, I love you. Paul, I love you more.
Very dubious decision.
There is a description on this one. Okay, hop to it. The Kia is as beautiful as he is intelligent and naughty. With an insatiable appetite for engaging in their surroundings, they are a delight to shoot.
We have a semi-finalist with a score of 83. There we go. Fantastic. Yeah, I think for all the reasons, the split-second timing of capture and whether you're hosing it down or just pressing a lucky shot, who cares? It's the result on the wall that matters, and that's fantastic timing. Next print, please.
There's no caption.
So, Paul, if the lights on the print aren't quite strong enough, Sorry, Steve, if the lights on the print aren't strong enough, it doesn't mean that your iPhone is going to make it any better. All good. I thought you were trying to tell me something. Okay, we have a commended with a score of 77, 76. You can challenge if you'd like to, Jackie. Yeah, that's right. So you're on 82.
Yeah, no, I just think this could go up into the next level. It's, I think it's been very well handled. It's been beautifully printed, and the fox is, if it is a fox, looks very sharp. I don't know what this animal is. Maybe somebody, is it? Do we? It's an Arctic fox.
Looks like
there
an
we go.
Arctic fox to me.
Well, I've
but
never been to the Arctic.
Joshua Holko's not here, so I'm not quite too sure.
But his tail gives it away as a fox. Yeah, I think it's a lovely little image. I'd like to see him not right in the middle, but sometimes these
So I
opportunities.
guess
don't
what
come
we're
up.
looking at, isn't it, is whether it should be commended or a semi-finalist. Yeah, Paul?
I do feel like the subject itself is handled really beautifully, and the delicacy of how it's separated, all its different sort of textural fur and form is really crisp and clear, but it's a little bit lost contextually, and it's competing a lot with the background for attention, and I feel like to isolating that either through a tighter crop or a different angle might have strengthened our relationship with the key subject.
Okay.
Yeah,
Steve?
just a quick comment. Perhaps the photographer can reconsider the crop, allowing that huge connection that they have with the animal to even come forth even stronger.
Okay. Jackie, would you like to add, or you're comfortable?
I'm just comfortable, just reconsider.
Thank you. If you'd like to rescore. You have to log in again, did you, Jack?
Yeah.
Just keeps on bumping us out, doesn't it? Thank you. We have commended at 77. Thank you very much. Next print, please. No, it's good. I recommend everybody put the scores in that they believe and we discuss it, because it's going to be very boring for me out here if you all score the same. Is there a caption? I'm sure there will be.
The caption on this one reads, glowing from intense ultraviolet radiation and spanning 60 light years. This bubble of ionised oxygen is blown by fast stellar winds from its central star, 25 hours exposure.
Well, we're going to have a talk, I'm sure. We've got definitely a semi-finalist with a score of 87, but if you've scored at 90, I want you to talk about it.
Well, I'd really like to talk about it. A 25-hour exposure. I think this has to go into the top level, because the photographer obviously knows a great deal about what he's doing. I don't know a great deal about what I'm looking at, but I do acknowledge the skill of this photographer. I've looked at some astro type photography, and I've never really been involved with it, but I'm in awe of this sort of work, and I think it should go up.
What is it that awes you, Jackie? Is it the composition? Is it the colour?
It's also the colour, yes. You know, I mean, I've taken a few shots of the stars, but to get this clarity and to see what's out there, it just goes on and on and on, and I'm just in awe of what I see in front of me.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I'm in the middle range, the semi-finalist range immediately because of the crispness and the clarity and the way that paper choice so beautifully brings that forth. It's quite exquisite. Where I feel like I struggle a little bit to go high is compositionally. It's very stretched and it's competing with itself a little bit above and below in the frame, and it feels quite tight at the bottom.
So, Bill?
Just quickly, these are among the hardest images for us to judge, actually. These are tough to judge because they're undeniably very, very difficult to achieve. They're unique, but in some ways you're limited by the technique and the time exposure and all of those kind of things. They are what they are. I'm not sure what else the photographer can bring to it. So I've been reviewing the criteria, and I just feel it sits very comfortably at the high end of the semi-finalist range. That's as honest as I can be.
Just a couple of side points from my limited understanding as well. We can't change the space between the objects in there because one of the category, but two, because of the nature of space, and two, the interpretation of the files that you get. And what you end up with is, you only have to look at bad astro photos and you understand the difference between what we've got. So I'm not trying to move it up or down, I'm just trying to give you a bit of an explanation. We've got a score of 87, which is a great score, but I'm going to encourage you to rescore and see where... Oh, Jackie, you're most welcome to have a right of reply.
Continue, I was just going to say exactly what you're saying.
Okay, thanks. So we've got an 89, have we? 89 by majority. Oh, well, you go. That's your fault. You're going to have to decide again later on. Well done. Wonderful score. Next print, please.
The description on this reads, platypus numbers are in decline. Several factors impact their natural habitat of freshwater rivers and lakes, and sadly they are now listed as near threatened.
We're going to have a 80 by majority, I'm thinking. We have indeed. So a semi-finalist. And I think it's that eye that's captured us all, hasn't it? And just within the ripples, I wonder whether there is a little bit more moulding you can do with just some very subtle lightening and darkening to give the platypus a little bit more three-dimensionality and possibly just darken down a fraction further at the top there. But that's to make it more pictorial. As a nature study itself, it's beautiful just as is. Next print, please.
The description on this reads, the wonder of cosmos intelligence showcased through its geometrical patterns and beauty.
We have a commended image again with a score of 70, waiting for the computer, 3. I think the photographer's to be congratulated. A lovely choice of subject, quite a common subject in terms that we all love it. Look at the detail that you've got in the highlights there, and maybe just printing it down a fraction more will bring in a little bit more of that information. And then do we need to have as much down the bottom? And maybe you could perhaps look at the way you're framing your subject. Bill, quick, sure.
One very additional, quick. I'm wondering if a photographer might like to try looking at this in black and white as well.
As black and white as the potential. Thank you. Next print, please.
The description on this reads, the wild horses of the French Camargue enjoy a gallop across the shallow salt marshes.
We have a semi-finalist with a score of 83. And I don't think any of us are going to argue that it's a very, very dramatic image. Again, I'm just looking at the tonality, and I know in reality the sky is probably lighter up there, but maybe to just bring that down and then put a little bit more light in through the middle just might give a little bit more luminance to it. But the positioning and the action of the horses is fantastic. Next print, please.
The description on this reads, Reflections, Deep Creek, Narrabeen, New South Wales. This creek crosses underneath the Wakehurst Parkway, one of Australia's most haunted roads. Haunted roads. The description reads, Reflections, Deep Creek, Narrabeen, New South Wales. This creek crosses underneath the Wakehurst Parkway, one of Australia's most haunted roads.
We have a 75, a commended image. And I'm going to ask Bill to have a quick... Oh, no, sorry, beg your pardon, I get it the wrong way around. Paul, I'm going to ask, because you're pretty close to the average there. I'm going to challenge you because it is a challenging picture.
And I continue to be challenged by it. It's, I'm trying to reach into the narrative from the description to see how that supports it. And I think if you're going to deliberately include a description, it needs to be very relevant to where. And I'm not quite joining the dots conceptually, and I'd love to be
Mel's got the
educated.
answer. Righto.
Educated, Mel.
Can I help you out with that? Can you not see all the faces and eyes and things in there? Okay. I invite you to go and have another look.
Okay, thank you. Next print, please. Okay, we're doing a quick judge swap.
The description on this reads, the aerial perspective reveals sawfish, pristis, and estuary stingrays. Do you mind just reading that again? Yeah. Do I need to read it with overlap? The aerial perspective reveals sawfish, prisits, and estuary stingrays. Daciatus flavorium, feeding in the shallows of Roebuck Bay, Western Australia.
You need to talk to someone who's technical, Robin. No point looking at me.
I did. Yeah, I know that look.
Is that spot?
You in? You done?
Yeah.
Well, pretty consistent scoring there. We have a semi-finalist with a score of 82. And subtle palette, I think, in terms of subtle colour palette, some really strong and interesting graphics coming through there. And yes, I can find the subjects in there if I look closely enough. Next print, please. '86. We have a semi-finalist.
I'd like to challenge that, please.
Well, I'll let you challenge that if you like, Jackie.
Am I on
All
my
right,
own?
You're on your... Well, no, yeah, but there are a few highs.
86.
Off you go.
Oh, look, I was looking forward to judging this one. It reminds me of cross-hatching in painting, in drawing. And the colours that are sort of seeping through from the background, it looks as though all those black lines might be a burnt forest. I'm not sure if they're burnt branches. I'm not sure how it's done or what it is, but it's really, really intriguing. I'm loving the colour palette. The only reason I didn't go any higher is in that top left-hand corner. It's just sort of unresolved compared to the rest of the image. But those little palettes of colour that are seeping through are absolutely glorious. And yeah, it's well deserving of being up there.
Are you making eye contact with me, Steve?
Well, yeah, we can go the other end first, but I'd like to make a comment eventually.
Sure, yep. We got no other ends. Everybody's happy. Everyone's up in the... Yep.
The actual vantage point that this photographer has chosen is extremely difficult. The focal length, like this is single capture that is actually going through many different layers of foliage and kind of wicker and all sorts of things. Then you have this beautiful yellow mound. I am coming up because the more this sits with me, just in comment to the top left, I actually don't think that that feels unresolved at all. I actually feel that it rounds it off nicely, just as organic and nature intends.
Anybody else need to comment? We're good. We're going to rescore. Okay, Jackie, you want to write a reply? You're happy with what Steve said for you?
I'm sure everybody is in agreement. I can't influence you.
No coercing here. Thank you, Jackie. We have a finalist at 90, I'm thinking. Is that correct? My eyes... Yep, there we go. Well done. Next print, please. So we have a semi-finalist again with an average score of 86. Steve's on 93, and he's indicated to me that he would like the rest of the panel to have a listen.
Absolutely. So obviously, I'm not even going to discuss the expertise in the decisive moment here. It's the way the photographer has decided to commit to a cinematic approach within this, the colour grading, and that kind of intent of that subtle warm tones that are actually coming through, which in itself makes it monotone. And just the technical craft that's actually here. I was further looking into some of the aspects of seeing where perhaps anything could be over sharpened or printed just not quite right, and it really is sitting up at that finalist range. The out of focus elements coming towards you in the foreground really give it that sense of depth. The totally blown out bouquet happening out in the background where it's just beautifully fading off into a darker tone, really sets the scene for these two having a bit of a karate match. Same thing, right?
Yes, it is. Of course it is. Mel, would you please say something?
Thank you. Actually, I'm coming up. I think that the darker tones that I was wrestling with at the back are actually necessary now when I'm looking at it to see the water that's being kicked around, and the bokeh or the foreground. It looks like glitter. It's gold. So yeah, I think congratulations to the photographer.
Yeah, incredibly decisive moment and technically handled brilliantly. I do agree that the spectral sort of qualities of the foreground are really supportive. I personally find the background a bit distracting in those large dark areas in particular, and they're competing a little bit with it. But and I also find that really I actually find the colour palette quite difficult to appreciate, and I feel like it's taken away rather than adding. It's not quite golden; it's more like a murky mustard, and I feel like that's not supporting, I guess, the natural space that they're in, and I don't see it moving into a more artistic space because of that choice. So I'm just struggling there a little bit, but the moment is actually quite incredible, and the engagement between the subjects exceptional.
Steve?
Yeah, I believe it's the photographer's intent that is very deliberate. One thing that really intrigues me more about this image is that each species is given their own space, and they're interacting. There is that connection. And there's such movement and vibrancy happening here as well, but with that sophistication and elegance that's going around with it.
Thank you, judges. We know you're about out of luck. Sorry, too late. Next, if you would rescore, please. Sorry, Robin, if I missed looking at you. You've got to look at me. We have a 89. So you get another chance to argue about this. Next print, please. 89 was pretty good. You can clap, you know. God, hard audience or what, eh?
The description on this print reads, silver-eye dewdrop. A sweet little silver eye, Zosterops lateralis, is briefly perched on a broken weathered tree branch to feed on a dew-covered seed. These small birds migrate from Tasmania.
We've got an 82 and a semi-finalist. I find almost sort of Japanese in its simplicity and its elegance. The fact that you can get in, you can see the grasshopper or whatever it is that the bird's captured and all that sort of stuff. It is absolutely beautiful, exquisitely done. Next print, please. There's no caption on this. Well, we do have a range, don't we? So we have a majority 80, which puts it as a semi-finalist. I know Paul's going to challenge me because he's on 91, and he should. And you've got a 70 as well. So you've got a really full gamut to deal with here.
Fantastic. I have literally been waiting an hour and hoping I was in this seat for when this print came up. From the second it came round during the print view, it just hit me in so many places. And I don't know what it is, but there's so many things that it could be. And I think that's where it's utterly exceptional. Is it the reverberation of a beating heart with the ripples going through out in the frame? Is it the translucence of a pair of lungs? Is it elements of smoke and movements that are rippling through? And it's presented in quite a sophisticated way. We've given this negative space. It's not overwhelming the frame. It's given us a little bit of opportunity to slow down and breathe and sit back and be present through that choice of composition. I would love to have a conversation about this.
Steve? Sure.
For that, and I love discussions like this, but for that very reason, the composition I found distracting. And that's really why I kind of sat it in the kind of commended range. Yet again, the texture, the colour tone, and the choice of the colour palette that did actually happen in nature and captured as a still is all there. However, I think the presentation and perhaps even sometimes the print quality that's actually happening here in terms of the resolution of the blacks could be considered as well.
Jackie?
Yeah, I really struggled to understand this picture, but I sort of see a koi carp. I'm not sure if I'm right or not. Sort of a koi carp. You know, the Japanese koi carps. They're that colour, and the on the left-hand side that could be a fish. I'm not sure. I really can't understand this, so I'm struggling.
Okay, we'll get someone to help. Robin? Yep.
Hello.
Yep.
I'm pretty. Am I on? I'm pretty sure it's one of those huge jellyfish that we get off Bobbin Head that are endemic to Sydney. They're about can be anything up to like half a metre across.
Man of War, maybe.
Man of War. Okay, and
No.
They
Someone know.
They are beautifully orange in colour, and so this is him in the water and just under the surface of the water where they normally reside. I feel like the black space on the left, the dark space, it works if it's water and he's descending into the depths of the water, because the author's given us a lot of beautiful texture at the top there. But I think on the same time, the texture of the jellyfish is so beautiful, it really should command the entire picture and not have any left over to the dark water.
Paul, right of reply?
Yeah, it quite instantly defies physical description. There is no obvious interpretation whatsoever from any sort of literary approach of what this could be, and that's actually where I think it's exceptional, and that there are a million other opportunities for where it can engage with. So it transcends a nature description and moves into a completely otherworldly realm of potential and possibilities. And you could spend a lot of time with that, the translucence of it and the luminosity coming through, how beautiful the tonality's been handled, the opposition of those warm and cool colours, sort of giving it a bit of spatial depth in a very otherwise flat kind of plane, and this beautiful amount of breathing room and space to let you go wherever you choose to go. It's gorgeous. I want gold. Well, finalists. I keep saying gold, but think golden thoughts when you rescore.
Thank you, Paul. And I think what he was trying to tell you is that he likes that picture, if you'd like to rescore. You re-entered your... Oh, sorry. Otherwise it's add up 4 and divide by 5 or something. That should help you. We we have an 85, so a semi-finalist. Well done. Next print, please. Yes, yes, you may. I can bring in. You need to as well. Hey? Over half. That's going to be going shortly. But I've got Bill there. That's fine. I've got Joe, so that's all right. We can do a double swap. Joe, I'll put you in there next one. We have an 80, a semi-finalist. I think it's the use of colour that we're all applauding here, and just the way that it leads you up. Beautiful palette, maybe just a slight darkening up there in the top left, but then maybe the photographer says that's the light coming through, so I'll let you guys decide. Beautiful image. Next print, please. Yes, please. Quick change. And also, Joe, you're going to take over from Mel. Mel, out. Okay. Art quiz. How are the blue coats going? We under control over there? Yeah, we got a no. Just give me an answer, but don't be truthful. Well, thank you guys for making it so seamless.
The description on this print reads, salt-loving bacteria and algae bringing surreal colour to these salt lakes in southwestern Australia as seen from a height of approximately 2,000 feet in the late light.
Oh, you like this one too, do you, Paul? Good to see. No, I like it. It's good. We should be pushing it along. 85, so it's a semi-finalist, and we've got a challenge already. You haven't got all that much work to do. Oh, yes, you've got one person you're going to have to turn around. But apart from that, it's all good.
Not another 70s. There we go.
Paul, floor is yours.
Have you had a close look at that paper choice? Unbelievable. Like it's so subtle and elegant, and yet if you get in closely, it's such a magnificent reward. The sort of glimmering elegance of every single pore in that paper comes alive the closer you get to it. And yet from a distance, we have a very, very sophisticated composition. We have a lovely sense of spatial depth, and yet we're not forced through the frame. We're delicately and gently directed through the frame by the base solid colour and the delicate softening of those tones as it goes through the frame, and those deepening blues which spatially pull you back further into the frame cognitively. It's a magnificent piece of art, and it's a beautifully seen and interesting choice to choose that dappled light, and that dappled light has been handled very gracefully, which is quite difficult to do, having had a crack at that quite a few times myself. Magnificent piece, a finalist for sure in my mind.
So, Jackie.
Yeah, I think it was the dappled light that really sort of pulls my eye out of the frame. But a beautiful colour palette, but I'm still looking at it, and I do really like the paper it's been printed on. Yeah, it's sort of, there's no cohesion for me. I look at I come in that bottom right-hand corner, and my eye just wants to come out again, following the big splash of orange. But yeah, I see two images here. I see it in two halves.
Bill? Yeah.
Unusually, I'm going to disagree mainly with Jackie, but agree mostly with Paul. I think the content, composition, lighting. Let's go back to basics. Content, composition, and lighting. Content is very strong. The composition is great. That wedge of orange pulling you into the picture. But the lighting choice to use that dappled light is what the photographer has brought to this, successfully in my view, and given it that leopard print kind of over that little... it's almost like light through a gobo on a film set, you know? It's breaking up the light. And for me, that's the added little bit that makes it a strong semi-finalist anyway.
Thank you. Right of reply, unless I'm missing someone.
Yeah, Jackie, I hear you about pulling out of the frame, but it's that sort of dance-like quality through the back of the frame and that alliteration that actually pulls you through the frame. And without that, you wouldn't be drawn more deeply into the depth of it. It's beautifully grounded for that solid point, and I feel like you've got lots of avenues to dance and walk through the frame, either structurally and through lighting and through the softening of the colour and the separation between the warm blues that come forward and the elegant soft blues in the background that pull you back is handled just to perfection. Come and join me in finalists, please.
Judges, if you'd like to rescore, we know what Paul is going to be doing. Oh, very eloquent. Oh, you've almost, geez, you moved a few people a long way away there, Paul. I don't know what you have in your sauce, but it's pretty good. 90, we've got a finalist image. Next print, please.
The description on this print reads, "The barking owl swooped for the last piece of meat. It landed on a branch and devoured the meal with the most satisfying grin."
We have a semi-finalist with a score of 80. There's quite a range of scores in there. Okay, Robin, off you go.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I must be on the upper range. But what's not to love about this lovely, strong, simple subject? The author has nailed the focus from the eyes to the beak and right through to the meat, you know, and those are the only important parts in the photo there. She's captured the beautiful finite detail in his little old man face. You know, that's really all we want to see in the picture, and there's no other competing elements around there for me.
So I need to talk to Joe, don't I? Joe, you need a microphone? Yeah. Paul's hogging it because he's so used to using it.
Oh, to be as eloquent as Paul. I was right down on this one. I don't think the focus was on the eyes at all. The left eye is in focus, the right eye falls off completely, and all that's sharp to me is the meat. It seems like a portrait of what is being eaten, not as what is eating it. So yeah, I'd need some convincing to move up much further.
Bill?
Supporting Joe in this, and also for me, the exclusion of the whole animal, of the whole bird, is a huge problem. I mean, the eating of the meat is one thing, but the delivery system for the meat is actually the claws, and I really want to see the claws as part of the picture to give me the essence of this behaviour, and I just think it's squatting down low in the frame, and I think it's very awkward. So my beef is mainly compositional.
Okay.
I take your point about the. I'll take your point about the
No
the
fun-
other eye being
no
out of
fun
focus.
intended.
Okay, yep, you happy? Yep. Okay, if you'd like to rescore. So we're sitting in there at 80 again, I think, with a semi-finalist. I'm just waiting for the score to come up and vindicate what I've said. That's correct. And my only, just a couple of observations for the author at, if they're at home or whatever. When I look at the digital file, it's a lot darker, and that red meat and the look and etc. It's just a completely different image. So when I came up to look at this print, I didn't like it, the fact that it was light. And the composition that Bill talks about, I think if you framed it tightly and cropped so that head is up in the top and you darken it down, you've got a wonderful image. And then go and find Topaz AI sharpener, and that'll fix up the eye that these other bugbears are worried about. Okay, next print, please.
Great expression. Great expression.
The description on this print reads, the aerial perspective reveals water buffalo, bubalis, taking refuge from the dry season heat in mud wallows.
I'm leaving at 4 o'clock, so I should be able to finish this then. Is that all right with, yep, all good?
We've been told by the caption that there's actually animals in there.
Yeah.
I'll just read the description again. The aerial perspective reveals water buffalo, bubalis, taking refuge from the dry season heat in mud wallows.
Yep, I can see him there. Sorry, we have an 82, a semi-finalist. You can't. Joe can. Is Joe? Well, if you want to challenge, I'll let you guys talk about it. I'm happy for you to talk about it. Off you go, Joe. You can ask a question.
It does count in this one. It does count in that category. It's not a finalist yet.
That doesn't even matter.
No, but it does if
If the entrant gets 84 instead of 82, they're going to be very happy. That's what we
Okay, cool.
That's the only thing.
They may make it up into the, yeah. Okay, I really enjoyed this image when it came around. The leading lines that are the footprints that lead into those little teeny tiny buffaloes that are hanging out in the watering hole of what's left of quite a large water area. You can see it's a little oasis in the desert. It's a beautiful angle. I think those leading lines, the colour palette, it's great. The only thing that I think I would have liked potentially to make me go a little bit higher was the fact that I felt like it was a little bit potentially over-sharpened or too much grain or something. It's a bit bitty. But the colours in it are great, the leading lines are great, the storytelling is awesome, and I think that it deserves to be high up there in our award, or in our semi-finalist area.
Thank you. Who else would like to talk? Jackie?
Yeah, I scored it an 84. Very pleasing image. I do find that red area on the top left-hand corner a bit distracting, but I do love the leading lines going through. Yeah, nicely printed.
Bill?
I didn't think the image supported the caption very well. All the action and the real interest in this picture is in the middle. So the core of the picture, this could have been cropped in by at least 50%. And from this height, it's very, very hard to see those buffaloes, which is really the point of the image. I mean, I really wanted to see those animals in that small amounts of water which have color to them as a feature contrasting against the other dark areas which are part of the soil, I think. So I just find from this height, it's not really doing the job that the caption is telling us that it's doing.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Bill. I feel like the context and the breadth of landscape is the deeper and wider conversation. The impact of drought, it accentuates just how tiny and minute the access to water source is, and that will be lost and overly accentuated in the wrong direction by coming in really close and making you feel like there was. And that amount of space, you know, the amount of direction and the sense of kind of areas and they need to cross, which are broad, expansive, hot, potentially dangerous to life, is really accentuated by that larger space. I'll leave it there.
Right of reply? You're good? Did I overlook you? Yeah, thank you. I don't want to get into trouble. Okay, Joe, you can take it home if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that it's been explained. I think it's great.
Okay,
Adds
thank
to
you.
the story of the space.
If you'd like to rescore. Joe, you've got to keep your score at 88. You have to type it in again because the computer loves you. And it's moved to 83. That's the semi-finalist. And just an observation for the photographer, if they're watching, maybe it's a little bit lighter in the print than it is on the screen, and so maybe what we're seeing isn't necessarily what they intended. Next print, please. I'm being kicked off by... I deserve that.
Peter hasn't changed his voice, it's just a change of panel chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. You've done an excellent job.
Okay.
Okay, judges.
The description on this reads, reminiscent of butterfly wings, this ring nebula surrounds a giant star in Sagittarius. The nebula has a double shell structure comprised of separate glowing gases. 14 hours exposure.
Just waiting on 2 more scores to come through. Sometimes the computer does take a little time to generate. And we have a score of 86. However, it looks like we are going to have a challenge from Jackie.
Okay. I think it's like a beating heart with this wonderful little star bursting out in the middle here. I think the composition is very strong. Again, the photographer doesn't really have much choice. It's what's happening over the however many hours, 14 hours or whatever it was period. but the colour palette in it is absolutely lovely, and my eye just keeps going round and round and searching deeper and deeper into the cosmos.
Okay, does anyone else want to have a discussion here? You're all pretty much even, except for Jackie and sitting in the finalists range. Okay, I'm going to get you to rescore. I think, Jackie, you have managed to pull out some elements in the image that stand out with the beating heart sense and the colour palette and the strong, vibrant, saturated colours that are coming through, and the fact the difficulty of capturing this sort of image. And it's moved 1 point. It's gone to 87. So a very good semi-finalists. Okay, can we have next print, please?
The description on this print reads, Dahlia, the symbol of beauty, commitment, kindness and strength.
And we have fairly consistent scoring here, and it comes out at 74. Commended. I think one of the things with images like this, sometimes the angle that it's presented to us on doesn't always work. So I think perhaps for the photographer, maybe re-look at the orientation of the image, and possibly even a little bit of darkening just behind the image where there's quite a large area of light, just to make that subject stand out. Can we have the next print, please?
The description on this print reads, black-shouldered kite, nesting.
And we have a score of 73. Again, all very, very consistent. Paul, what have you got to say about this image for the photographer's benefit?
It is well composed, and it does feel like a decisive moment and a beautiful angle to explore the qualities and characteristics of this creature. And there's a behavioural element. I think as a file, as a print, becoming close, it really falls apart in a way that you cannot ignore. I'm not sure if it's the camera quality itself, but the file structure is really difficult to engage with. It doesn't translate the book very well.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do a judge change, and I'm going to get Joe, if you wouldn't mind hopping off, and we'll get Mel come on. Next print, please. Sometimes getting those long distance shots, you need really good quality lenses to really bring out the detail in the subject matter.
There's no description for this.
It's always important to give the judges plenty of time to look at the images, to draw out every aspect of what they're looking at. And we have a score of 85, solid semi-finalist. Okay, but we have a challenge. We've got Paul on 92.
Yeah, it's rich yet understated. It's circular, it's flowing. It has this curious level of spatial depth. It has a wonderful conversation about cross-species relationships. It has a wonderful juxtaposition between the size and behaviours of different animals. It has an exquisite turquoise sort of colour palette that's beautifully rich. The graphic sort of nature of how it's held within that frame with the circular movement through the middle is beautifully held by the square crop. There's so much magnificence going on in this. It's well worth spending some more time with, speaking to, in my opinion. I'm a finalist at 92. Not to mention the print quality. Oh my God.
Okay, and I'm going to now come to Robin for a comment, please. You're sitting on 80.
Well, I'm just wondering what the humpback's doing in there. I mean, his behaviour is, they don't like sharks, and so he is exhibiting behaviour there that will scare them away, but I'm surprised that he's in the middle of all those sharks in the first place, because he would never normally put himself there. There's a lack of detail in the whale for me. I appreciate this is an aerial or a drone shot, and that of course that's very difficult to get. But for me, I would have liked to see a bit more of the ribbing down the front of the whale as well. I appreciate all the comments about the colour and the circular motion as well, and the crop.
Bill.
It's actually the print quality that held me from going any further. I don't think it is a great print. I wonder if the photographer might have experimented with a more reflective paper. We've seen a couple of examples of that used on various subject matter very effectively. I think this is very flat. I think it's flat in contrast as well, not just the paper surface. I'd like to see a bit more drama in the print, because in every other aspect it's a very admirable picture, as Paul has detailed for us.
Okay, Paul, I'm going to come back to you for writer reply.
Yeah, there's an additional aspect to this. If you look closely, there's this wonderful vertical striation running through the frame that comes through the print that gives it yet another just sense of directional flow, sort of top to bottom. So you have the circular flow of the creatures, and I actually appreciate how Robin really accentuated that cross-species conversation about how one species speaking to another is completely enveloped by a completely different species, and whether it's feeling threatened or how it speaks to that dynamic between two species, which is quite a clever thing to present. And it's done with a lot of space, a lot of elegance, a lot of grace, a lot of graphical strength, beautiful tonality, and yeah, I personally feel like there's a lot of detail in there up close, and particularly if you look at how incredibly resolved the movement feel free to rise yourself a little higher.
Okay, judges, can I get you to rescore, please? It's moved 1 point. We now have 86 solid semi-finalists. Next print, please. Print quality, I think, is something that when you are printing for awards, it is really important to maybe experiment with different papers, just to ensure that your image is presented in the best possible way.
The description for this print reads, "An overcast, smoke-filled atmosphere offers soft light to shine through and highlight the plumage of a perched rainbow bee-eater, Merops ornatus. These paperbark branches supply a covered vantage point for observing potential insect meals in flight. Status in decline."
And we have a score of 78. We're-
Sorry. It's getting to the end of the day.
Jackie is challenging
oh,
us on 84.
I would really like to see this cropped, the left-hand side cropped, and I think this would make it much stronger. But look, I think it deserves more than
78.
commended. Yeah, I'd like to see it lifted into semi-finals. It's beautifully sharp. I love the simplicity of it. It's almost like a Japanese fabric. So I'd like you judges to lift your.
I'm with Jackie.
Robin?
I think that I can't see a better crop in there. The blur on the back just creates a beautiful depth of field, and the colour and the sharpness of the bird just doesn't, you can't go anywhere else but to him with that beautiful forest.
You're looking at me like, don't you even think about it.
Go for it.
I feel like the context is overly emphasised and competing very heavily with the subject matter, and it doesn't need that amount of context to give it position and space in that environment. I see a beautiful vertical crop through the middle around the bird. It's probably quite an elegant choice where it's just enough of the context to be really clear, centre the environment without overly competing with the key subject.
Okay, Jackie, back to you.
Well, if this does remind me of a Japanese print. I can see this is a lovely woodcut, and it's very elegant. And yeah, just consider your scores.
Awesome. Judges, rescore, please. I think, and I guess I'm allowed to give my perspective. In terms of the direction that the bird is actually looking, where there's so much behind the bird that it does actually leave a little bit of empty space that's potentially not needed there. And we have a score of 79. We are going to be going to review later on. Okay, Robin, I'm going to get you to step off, and Steve, I'm going to bring you back on. And we'll have the next print, please.
The description on this reads, Rainbow Lunch. A rainbow bee eater woos his best girl with the promise of a delicious snack.
And we have a bit of a range of scores here. And we have 81 overall, semi-finalist. And we're going to get a challenge from Bill, who is on 87.
I think it's better than a low semi-finalist. I think this is very strong. This, going back to basics again, content, composition, lighting. It's got all three of those, but it's also got behavior. And behavior is something that we always look for in nature pictures if we can find it, particularly with wildlife. This is a really descriptive capture of something that happens every day, but it's not easy to do. The photographer has controlled the focus on this to the point where this is suitable both for as wall art or in a textbook. It can be used for either thing. So it's both descriptive and interpretive at the same time. I think it's worthy of further consideration.
I'm going to come to Paul on 77.
This is one of the images that really stood out to me through the digital run-through instantly. That beautiful repetition. It's almost like the characteristics of the leaves are like a third character, and how beautifully they mimic the shape and the coloration of the birds. The lighting's exceptional, the behavioural content is quite exquisite, but it actually very, very sadly falls apart quite significantly as a print. The print resolve is really not there. There's a digitisation through the branch, and I'm not the kind of person that generally gets sucked into the technical, but it is a print awards, and it is quite significant, and unfortunately I can't go in there because of that.
I'm not 100% seeing what you're seeing there, Paul, with that digitisation. For me, it's, I'm not sure if the other judges want to have another look and see.
I can comment on that.
Steve.
I saw the same. Yeah, I scored at 78.
Yep.
For those aspects, I feel that the content is exquisite. The printing did actually let it down, and it's a. Please don't get me wrong. It's a commended image, and the content is there. But this is a print awards as well. So to bring it up to that certain level, perhaps it is over sharpened, and perhaps the photographer has reached the limit of the optics that had actually captured the image as well.
Okay, Bill, I'm going to come back to you.
Yes, thank you. The difference between the low scores and the high scores is about 10 points, and I don't think there's 10 points in those small discrepancies. I can see a little bit what could be considered over-sharpening on the branch itself, but the birds are wonderful. The birds are just beautiful. You don't see that in the birds, and I think we're being unnecessarily harsh for a small technical point on a picture which is, in every other aspect, extremely admirable.
Okay, I tend to agree with you there, Bill, but I'm going to let all the other judges decide for themselves and rescore. it scores 84. Well done. Semi-finalist, mid-range. Next print, please. So this is the nature and wildlife category, and we are ready to go again, and this is sponsored by Oecom. And we have a score of 78, but I can see we've got a hand waving. Steve, pick you.
So there is an elegance and a sophistication to this image just within its pose. Obviously, this is a detailed, captured, decisive moment. I was looking for I can almost preempt what my fellow judges might talk about in terms of highlight detail, right? There is highlight detail in there. Bear in mind, it is a white bird. I'm not even going to pretend to guess what species it is. White feathers against, to me, it doesn't actually matter. It's the elegance within that species. The beak, it's conveying a stillness that I do believe should be a semi-finalist.
Bill, I'm going to come to you down the other end on 72.
Sorry, me. Yeah.
Yep.
First of all, it's not that unusual a pose. It's fairly standard. This grooming practice is fairly standard. I agree that aspects of it are really sweet. I mean, the feet and the legs look like a Giacometti sculpture. It's terrific the way it's actually holding onto the branch. To me, that's the most interesting part of the image. But it's the failure to control the white on white, which has kept me big time away from elevating it into a semi-finalist range, I'm afraid.
Paul.
Yeah, I think structurally those legs are magnificent. That elegant sort of gentle separation that speaks of its capacity to balance on such a lengthened kind of space. I think the timing is beautiful. I'm a little bit unsure compositionally why it's sort of off-centre and is that actually supporting or taking away. And I feel like the separation of subject is it's a bit tricky. It literally melts into the background at the top. And if you shot that in a different kind of lighting situation, it would often separate a little bit more. And I'm trying to decide if that's a strength or a weakness. So speak to me, Steve.
I think it's a strength.
Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Kate. Yeah, look,
He's so excited.
I completely agree with absolutely everything that you've said, and which is why I've scored it in that semi-finalist kind of range. Though that sculptural elegance of those legs. And I will speak to the tension that's created where it's not necessarily balanced in terms of the composition, which is why I didn't even bring it up further. But if you do look towards those highlights, they are actually there. I love a good print, and these feathers are printed beautifully from that water.
Okay, judges, we are sitting on 78. Steve is sitting on 85, and that's, I guess, where he wants you guys to head up towards. But again, make up your own minds and rescore. I think the photographer's definitely controlled that depth of field and where the sharpness is where it needs to be. Love the enthusiasm and passion. Well, it's worked. It's brought it up to 80, which is good. So congratulations to the photographer. Semi-finalist. Next print, please.
The description on this print reads, "A bird, perched and silhouetted, framed by the branches." The description reads, "A bird, perched and..."
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. Can I just have quiet from the audience, please?
The description on this print reads, "A bird, perched and silhouetted, framed by the branches."
Okay. And the print score's 72, and I think we're all reasonably close on that. Steve, you wanting to make a comment? Yep,
Yeah.
Perfect.
Really enjoy the intent of the photographer here. There's a certain amount of humour that's happening here, almost like a Tamagotchi or kind of Pokemon. Yeah, exactly. Please keep exploring this, perhaps a further crop or discovering more scenes like this high contrast to try and get these fun, humorous moments.
I saw a little hand, actually, the fingers of a hand actually holding the little... Yeah, but I think there's definitely some distracting elements going on around that are not really complementing the overall visual of the image. Okay, next print, please.
The description on this print reads, "The fighting dragons of Ara, massive young stars born within this nebula, form swirling clouds of glowing gases and fragmented molecular dust. 26 hours exposure."
We go straight to 92, finalist. We are going to get a challenge from Paul, who is actually on 98.
Talk to me.
Yep, talk to them.
Yeah, when I saw this car around for the digital run through, I was just salivating, and so incredibly beautifully rewarded by the magnificence of the print quality itself. I mean, it's quite transcendent, you know. It's a mythical quality. It's almost biblical in terms of that fighting dragon sort of, deep in the ethos of space. You know, it has a spiritual quality. It has a phenomenal representation of the skill level and the understanding of subject matter and the technical handling of this, and the commitment taken also is represented perfectly in every pore of that frame. I think the separation that comes between the blues and the warms gives it this added spatial depth that pulls it through the middle of the frame. Nothing's overly handled. There's gorgeous little texture to hold you in points, and yet there's this gaseous kind of fluid elements around it with elements of softness and harshness that go back and forth and maybe around the frame. I just want to eat it.
It's magnificent. I want to look at every part of it. It's magnificent.
Guarantee you indigestion.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to come to Jackie, who's sitting a little bit down the other end.
Look, I'm happy to come up. I still scored it well. I suppose it was the soft areas in it that really pulled it back for me. But
Anything else, Jackie? Or
look, I think the photographer who has the patience to do these should be commended. And I mean, to get these brilliant images, they are quite brilliant.
Thank you. Mel? Oh, no, Steve.
Yeah, look, I'm at the lower end at 94. Basically the depth that's actually created here. So I want to actually not only touch upon the mood, but also the technical application that's actually what this image is actually printed on. There's a certain depth that is happening here. There is no kind of elements of what we would normally call chromatic aberration or refraction or anything like that. Absolutely everything is pin sharp, and we can tell that by the little pinpricks that are actually happening. Now, I am making no kind of apologies for my lack of knowledge with all of this. However, what I see in front of me is exceptional composition. The color palette is really kind of elegant and sophisticated, and it's beautifully balanced. I am actually going to be coming up.
Okay, if no, Paul, write a reply.
Only 3 words. Utter magnificence in every possible level. Please consider awarding this image maker with every single point you can possibly squeeze out of that interpretation. Amen.
Paul, thank you. And for my and for my 2 cents worth, when I first looked at this image, I found the three-dimensionality of it was just absolutely superb. The dynamic energy that is being captured within that whole atmosphere is just, sublime. I'm not leading you any direction, but judges, rescore. So sitting on 92, wasn't it? Was that right? 92? And Paul was looking for a little bit more. You right, Jackie?
Technical difficulties.
scores coming through now.
Yeah, I haven't scored yet.
The suspense.
It's taking approximately 1 light year.
Yeah, well, that's it. We'll get another image like this. Okay, judges. We have a 96. So huge congratulations to the photographer on what they have captured here and the well-deserved score. Okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, and we will have the next print, please. Okay, the scores are coming through. And we have a score of 90. Finalist. And Bill, you're going to challenge? I mean,
I'm not going to challenge.
theoretically you don't need to challenge.
What are our options here?
Okay, okay. It's a finalist, whether you challenge or not. The score itself doesn't make a lot of difference around that.
No,
What it comes down to is the finals judging.
Are we able to talk this up, or is it not technically possible?
I believe you.
Yeah, we can.
You can. You're anyone in that finalist range has the right to challenge.
So I'd like to.
Yep. No problem. Bill, you're
do it, yeah.
challenging. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not challenging that it's a finalist. I'd like to see it scored even higher, actually, because I
that's
think this
fine.
is one of the most magnificent images that we've seen this afternoon. In the run-through, this was the picture that excited me the most. This is, wow, where do I start? Let's get things out of the way first. The print quality is great. It's, I have no technical issues with it at all. It's the metaphor or the implied narratives here that really interest me the most. This is it's an avalanche. It is an exploding volcano. It's a moving mountain. It is so many different things, and that lovely S curve that runs through it is just the most wonderful source of energy through the whole picture. You know, we're led through this. Every bit of the picture is being covered by this frame. The crop is perfect. But it's such an incredible moment of energy being displayed in nature that it's very, very difficult to capture this. You know, we've seen heaps and heaps of pictures of exploding waves and all this, but this is just something else again, I think. So I scored at 93, but I'd be happy to see it get a final score of 93 or higher.
Okay, I'm going to come to Steve.
Yes, and I did see absolutely everything that you did see, Bill. And I, on closer inspection, noticed very obvious cloning that is happening here. And I don't know how to respond to that, but it is clearly cloning, and I don't know what to do.
We get the rules. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to. Okay. Just to clarify. Just to clarify the rules of the category, and maybe we need to question this at another point, but what I'd like to do is judge the image at this point in time. Post-production techniques such as dodging and burning may be used to enhance the image as long as the authenticity of the original scene is retained.
Okay, well, with that assumption, you could suggest that that
I'll-
is
I'll-
allowable, perhaps?
I'll add, there's another, I'm just sort of skipping through here. With the exception of cropping, the addition, removal, relocation or replacement of pictorial elements is not permitted. But what I'm going to ask you as judges to do is to judge the image as you see fit, and any further discussion on the image will be taken up with those in the know.
Should we not just keep the scores we have in that case, because we can't challenge on this basis?
Well, it's irrelevant, I guess, later on.
Well, it'll be.
We're here only to judge what's in front of us.
It'll be
Their job is to
post-judged.
subtract. Whatever score it is imperfect and worthless to what they're doing. If they decide to keep it, we'll honour them with the score it deserves, and if they don't, then
Yep.
it's taken away from them.
Yep. So, are you happy to carry on with that?
Well,
Under those conditions, that you judge it as you see fit now? You challenged it?
yeah,
So you judge it?
I accept I accept what Steve has told me. I didn't see that before, so I can't defend it or talk it up anymore.
Yep, no, that's all cool. That's cool. So, you've happy? You finished? Paul?
Yeah, regardless of that, I think it doesn't take away from the authenticity and the power and the magnificence of what's being presented with at all. From an emotional point of view, from a design point of view, from a structural point of view, it's almost biblical. I'm just taken to the tempest of the sea in a way that almost is beyond description. The level of emotion in this is utterly magnificent. And what I find really, really intriguing is if you look at the bottom end of the frame, it has a very descriptive, literal aspect to it that gives it a lot of grounding, but if you move through the frame, it's almost like it moves into a painterly sort of abstract presentation, and I'm not sure how that's done or why, but that really asks me to move into a less literal and more mythical and biblical interpretation through that gorgeous pathway as well. Utterly magnificent. I'm already on finalist and I'm coming higher.
Okay. Bill, I'm going to cut you're quite happy with it? Yep.
Well, I can't say
Okay.
otherwise.
Yep. No, that's fine. Okay, judges, I'm going to get you to rescore. Oh, sorry, judges. Yep, ready to go. Away you go. Enter your scores. So, Bill, I think you're locked in. Anyone else can move their score. And while we may see things in prints, we can't always assume, make assumptions, but we can judge based on what we're seeing. And there will be discussion by the powers that be of the competition to see whether the image sits. And we have a score of 90, so it stays on 90. It is a finalist. And we have the next print, please. After all the years of experience I've had myself within print judging, mostly in Australia, but I've judged many times over here in mostly in New Zealand, but I've judged many times over here in Australia, is that there are always times when people don't read the rules. And so I urge all entrants to make sure that you print out a copy of the rules when you enter a competition and highlight the areas that are significant to your own category and ensure that you comply with those rules. And we have a score of 86, a very solid semi-finalist. However, we do have one judge sitting on 90. You have a couple of others that are up towards you. So I'm going to, go for it. Mel.
You can't design this much better. I mean, what a composition. And to go in close and see those, what are they, claws, entwined, hanging on to each other, that perfect eye connection and relationship between the two birds. I initially felt that, the background is a little dark but it sets it off magnificently, and you can't fault it, really.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come to Steve, who's on 81. Maybe didn't quite see what Mel did, but
and I'm definitely open to discussion because I can see that beautiful, delicate mating dance or karate, whatever you want to call it, between the two birds. What really, as a print competition, what really does falter, perhaps, is the paper choice, the density of the contrast, perhaps even the choice of black and white. But there's all these elements that I feel need to be taken into consideration as well.
Bill.
Supporting Steve in that, and I'm just referring to the scoring criteria. To become a finalist, it needs a superior level of technique, post-production skill and image quality. Technique, undeniably there. I mean, the photographer has captured this fantastic moment. It's one of the best examples of behaviour that we've seen in this whole display this afternoon, but the print quality is poor. The blacker blacks and better controlled highlights are what really is needed here to pull them a bit more out of the background. So I'm kind of with Steve in that part of the critique, and I think that we need to remember that it is a print competition.
I'm going to come back to you, Mel, for right of reply.
Thank you. I don't think you can get those legs any blacker or that beak. And whilst I understand it is a print competition, we're in wildlife and nature, and what the photographer has seen and captured really needs to be commended. So I encourage you to have another look.
Okay, judges, I'll get you to rescore, please. So currently sitting on 86. So print quality plays such an important part in print awards. Having work print, whether you print your own work or whether you get someone else to print it, understanding dynamic range is key. Okay, so we have a score now of 87. Solid semi-finalist, and that was the last image. So well done, everyone. I'd like to thank Wacom. So this was the Nature and Wildlife category, sponsored by Wacom. And want to do a big shout out to our print handlers. We are about to do the reviews. So judges, can I get you to grab one of these each?
Who do we point it to? Sorry. Direct it to you or direct it to me?
Just direct it to me. So does it stay on 79 commended, or does it move to semi-finalist on 80? Okay, it goes to 80, semi-finalist. Next one. So this print sits on 79, and I'm going to ask you to tell me whether you would like to move it to 80, semi-finalist, or keep it on 79, and it stays on 79. Commended. So this print scored 89. Does it move to 90 finalist, or does it stay on 89 semi-finalist? And we have a 90. Oh, hang on. Yep, 90 finalist. Well done. And I think that's one more to come. So this is sitting on 89. Do you wish it to move to 90 finalist or keep it on 89 semi-finalist? And we don't need any others, but I think we are almost unanimous. It goes to 90 finalist. Congratulations to all entrants. It's a big thing getting your prints judged by peers. And we've seen a great range of images here in the Nature and Wildlife category, sponsored by Wacom. And we are going to sign out for the afternoon. And thank you very much for listening in, those out there in online land. Oh yeah, please do a big hand to the print handlers. They've been brilliant.